Shalom, guys. So this is not what I expected. Abba is taking us on a little detour. My last message was Key of Knowledge Part 1. We only got through like the first half of Luke 11:52, but before we finished the second half of that verse, he really made this message urgent, which is still part of the Key of Knowledge message. So make sure that you have watched that one. And I have to admit that this is a message that I've been avoiding for some time, which is probably one of the reasons why it's taking me so long to get out. And he's always teaching me about the lessons of the messages through my living experiences as he's preparing me to deliver them. So, this message is about letting go. We all have different things that we hold on to. It is what we hold on to in our heart and our mind that keeps us from receiving the key of knowledge, which is why this message was so important. And it is the key of knowledge that unlocks the prison doors of our mind. Our Abba wants us free. I've been arguing with him about the length of this message because of my own discomfort and struggle with letting go. There is a lot that he wants me to say, but none of it will be able to be understood without you talking to him about all of it. This is all part of the battle of the mind. We're all going through it in different ways, and we're all learning how to let go so that we can be yoked to our Abba only. He keeps putting the word division in my mind. These messages are being used as a part of the division that Yeshua said he came to bring. I'll be revealing some of the work of the lying pen of the Scribes, and I'll be talking about a few different scriptures, but I'll only be breaking down one in the Otiot on the screen to save time. It's really important that you have seen the whole Hidden Knowledge series. Don't forget about the completion of that series being about what we are reaching for, what we stretch our hand out to. When we think that we've found what it is we've been reaching for, we grab a hold of it. What we are holding on to is what becomes our strongholds. Don't forget that strongholds come from agreements that we make. It's about what we believe and who or what that belief is rooted in, who suggested it to us, and where does our understanding come from. If the seed of opposition suggests an idea, whether through a whisper, like a thought, or through the words of someone else, conversations, teachings, books, internet, when you agree, you are grabbing a hold of that idea, which becomes a yoke that steers your path of life. Remember that. A yoke is a stronghold. David wrote many times about how YHWH is his stronghold. David had the key. When it comes to strongholds, what our enemy does not want us to know is that it is us who have the choice to let go. We just have to know what it is that we're holding on to. The message of being yoked to our Creator is found all through the Otiot, and therefore hidden all throughout Scripture. The yod, the arm and the hand, is just one of the many Otiot modeling this idea of a yoke. This is the first oath in YHWH. When we studied the word aman, faith, we found in the roots the word for arm. The ancient Hebrews believed that the arms are the glue that encircles and holds together. A hug is just one model of a yoke among many. And a hug is a perfect example for reminding us that these models in the physical are to teach us about the unseen. In other words, Just because he is teaching us about not being yoked to anything or anyone but him does not mean that we can't give someone a hug. It's very important that you understand the Eastern mindset of learning. The word love, ahav, is also about being yoked to your provider. YHWH is love. He is our provider who steers us by his living word, through his ruach. This is being yoked to him, and this is YHWH. And this is where every message in his Otiot will lead us back to, our Creator's love for us and his desire to be one with us. We cannot walk in love unless we are yoked to him only. In my message on desire, Abba told us that was the jumping off point to a new beginning. I have now received a deeper understanding of what he meant. He wants us to let go of everything in this world and trust him only. Just like baby birds need to someday take the big jump out of the nest and trust the instinct that YHWH put inside them, we have to trust the living word that YHWH puts inside us. And sometimes we need a little push. I told you that's what he was doing with that last message. He was pushing me out of the nest. But remember, that whole nest model that he has taught us is about him being our provider. To be able to enter the kingdom of YHWH, it must be him alone who you serve. You agree with those words because you see them written in Scripture, but do you have the understanding of what it means? In the Otiot, him alone you shall serve actually says, it is him alone who does the work. It is him alone who leads us. He alone is our provider. Satan was trying to tempt Yeshua here with what he could provide, and Yeshua said, I don't want nothing that you provide. That word there for serve, we saw when we did Zephaniah 3:9, translated to serve there also. And of course, we want to serve him because we love him. We are bondservants. But that word is abad, ayin, beit, dalet. And it is where we got our English word abide and abode. We abide in his yoke, which is his living word. But we can't abide by his living word if we can't let go of all the other things trying to steer us. Since this is all part of the key of knowledge message, let's recap. The key is about entering. Pay close attention to this. There are two parts to this understanding of entering. YHWH entering us, and us entering his kingdom. But both are the same, because his kingdom is where he reigns, and he reigns from within us. The kingdom is inside us if we have the key. That is why he taught us about the authority inside, being the true understanding of our heart and mind. And this is how he speaks to us, if we desire him. He is our authority and directs us through our hearts and minds. The ancient understanding of this word is a hole for entering, or entering through a hole. We are the hole that needs to be filled with his living word, who heals us. And this happens by his ruach, which is why you see the word blow. Yeshua blew on his Talmudim and said, receive the Ruach HaKodesh. If you've been watching my videos, you know that Ruach, spirit, is about a prescribed path. This is about us being directed by the Ruach of YHWH from within us, each on our own journey, but on the same unseen path. And we are then divided from the world, right now living in it, but not of it. don't forget that this word is also used to describe the act of intercourse. And I really can't go any further without being completely obvious about this, because this is the most sacred model that Yahweh gave us in the physical to teach us about relationship. And even though it is a model in the physical, in the seen, it is to be hidden from the eyes of others, a special experience for two only, behind closed doors. This model is all over the Otiot and in the deepest meaning of so many words. Adam knew Eve, talking about intercourse. That word is yada, an intimate knowing, and yada is part of the word knowledge. The key of knowledge is an intimate relationship with Yahweh. Also, the two shall become one flesh. One is ECHAD, unity. Why do you think we call it making love, ahav, yoked to our provider? The model of intercourse is about a yoke. It's about the headship, the authority, the husband becoming ECHAD with his wife. Yahweh is the husband. Israel is the wife. We are Israel. Israel means overcomers in Elohim, the ones who overcome the world because they have the authority of Yahweh, the rod of Yahweh working on the inside of them. The rod of Yahweh working on the inside of them. The rod. Get it? Look, you have to understand something. The body makeups of a man and a woman are models to teach us. A man represents Yahweh. That's why a man is spoken of the way he is in Scripture. He is the father of the house, the husband, the headship, the authority, the leader. And this is why he has a rod on his body that enters into the whole of his wife and disperses seed. The good seed, living water. Think about that. Liquid that is living. We talked about this in the Aman study. This represents how the rod of Yahweh is our counsel, because it is the living rod that has the living water inside it, and his authority enters us. Authority inside, guiding and steering our heart and mind, and his seed takes root in us, becoming the new us who will be born at the completeness of transformation, which is the true understanding of the rapture. And woman represents sick man. Literally, those are the words used in the lexicon. Woman represents corrupted mankind who needs salvation by becoming one with Yahweh. Don't get hung up on this. It's a model. It does not mean that women are corrupted and men are gods. It's just the way the Eastern mindset works, through models and concepts. Hear that word? Concepts. Conception. Do you see how many witnesses he gives us? Everything that he created, he designed for teaching. And no matter what you're doing while you walk through this world, if you have his eyes, you will see his truth in everything. Okay, let's do a quicker recap on knowledge. So knowledge is received through experience. It is not about what is learned from books or the mouths of others. It is about what we perceive with our spiritual eyes and ears through what we see and hear through experience. Spending time with Yahweh, we will learn through every moment of our lives if we are walking with his living counsel within us. We will then be able to enter the kingdom because we will have his mark. The ancient Hebrews understood this word to describe an intimate relationship with another. So we are talking about the key of relationship with Yahweh. We saw in our last study that Yeshua is talking here to those who don't have the true key of knowledge. because they are not really desiring a relationship with their Creator. But while still pretending to have one, they are using the written rules of manipulated scripture to enslave and keep others from receiving the key, leading them to walk by sight instead of faith, Aman, keeping them from relationship with their Creator. Woe to you who use the Torah to enslave and rule over others by your so-called wisdom, as you have taken away the true rod of desire, that is the counsel, the living word of YHWH, who is and gives the key of knowledge. Remember that word Torah at its core is talking about the direction or path that one is to take in life. And they called the books written by Moshe the Torah because they were given by YHWH to help his people zakar him, remember him, after enslavement, because they forgot their first love, their first provider. The written Torah was not given to take the place of his living word. And this is what Hebrews chapter 11 is all about. We are not to be directed by what is seen. The true Torah lives inside us if we are reaching for him with desire to know him. Why does he direct us from the inside of us? Because everything in the seen falls into the hands of corruption. We are told that those who have handled the Torah do not know him. This is about the lying pen of the scribes. Don't forget what this channel is all about. It is about revealing the purest form of the written word, which is a witness to the living word of YHWH. It's not the other way around. It is the living word that is from the beginning. And he is pouring out his ruach on those who are reaching for him. It is not the written form or image of the Otiot that we are holding on to or relying on. We only hold on and rely on the understanding that is given to us by the ruach of YHWH. The Otiot is a witness because that is how he designed it. They are not just letters or pictures, but actually a representation of living models and concepts. Be changed throughout thousands of years and how confused the languages would become, he allowed his written word to be manipulated by man because it was always part of the plan. Nothing happens behind the Creator's back. Nothing can happen without him allowing it. He didn't establish that his people would be guided by his living word and then change his mind and say, never mind, you're actually going to be following these written rules instead because, yeah, the whole living word thing, that didn't work out. Are you kidding? He's got everything in his control. Don't be looking around at the craziness of this world and for 1 second assume that he's not in complete control. Everything that we are seeing happen in this world today, he already saw every single second of it. And we were chosen to live in this time. So clearly we can handle it. Because if you're yoked to him, it's not you handling it. And don't forget that it's not for everyone to enter the kingdom. In other words, it's not for everyone to receive the key. And this is why the living word teaches in parables, which only he can interpret. You do not receive understanding from written words. These translations that we have today are written in Western languages that continue to modernize, developing farther west as time goes on, with abstract and subjective terms that are totally left up to current cultural definitions and trends. We have grown up in a westernized world that has yoked us, tamed us, trained us, and conformed us to itself, enslaving the way that we learn and think. How do we know what is true? How do we know right from wrong in this world? From the time we are babies, not even able to speak yet, We are constantly hearing the opinions and so-called facts of the world, every day, all day. By the time we get to be adults, how much of what we think we know is from the mouths or writings of people, and how much is actually from life experience? And even out of those experiences, how much of what you learned from those experiences has been tainted by the opinions and teachings of other people? We have been trained to think that truth is about religion rather than relationship. We have been tricked into thinking that the source of truth that sets us free is found in written words that have been in the hands of corrupt man. We have been tricked into relying on man while thinking that we're not. The key of knowledge that comes from Yahweh unlocks the prison doors of our mind and allows us to enter through the door of salvation. And this is what being transformed by the renewing of our mind is all about. When Yeshua's Talmudim asked him what would be the sign of his coming at the end, we read something like, "See that you are not deceived by man," or "Take heed that no man lead you astray." I'm not going to break down this scripture on the screen with each word because I want to save time for that in another scripture. But I need to tell you what this scripture really says, which is, you will perceive by the Ruach of Yahweh that you have been deceived. It's not a warning of what might happen or could happen. It has happened. Here's the full translation from the Otiot of this portion of scripture. The Ruach of Yahweh will cause you to wake up, see, and perceive the error of man that has placed a beam in your eye and turned your attention away from truth, changing what you experience through your eyes, causing deception in your spiritual perception that has led you astray, leading you by the inner workings of the world's desire planted in you by the seed of opposition, which has caused strong separation from Yahweh, burning up what is truth and causing despair in many, causing complete loss of the true hope. Many of us have already awoken to this deception, and many are just beginning. And of course, this has a lot to do with the lying pen of the scribes. And I gave a deeper translation of that scripture, Jeremiah 8:8, in Hidden Knowledge Part 1 3/4. But I wanted to share something about the pen for you to chew on. Think about the rod. A pen is another model of a rod. It is used by man as a way of authority, and the ink is the seed. Okay, go back to the model of the liquid seed that comes out of the rod. So he showed me the negative and positive of this model. For example, the original writers of Scripture who were chosen by Yahweh, given his authority, working on the inside of them, they were dispersing the seed of Yahweh on the pages of the original scrolls. The unseen living word of Yahweh, his seed, working through them and becoming the written word into the seen. And this is why it was so much more pure in its original form, because it was the living word becoming the written word through the vessels that Yahweh chose to give his rod. And they picked up a rod in the seen, and it became manifest. Now remember what he has taught us about what enters into the seen. Anything in the seen is able to be corrupted, because it can then be touched by the hands of corrupt man. Which brings us to the lying pen of the scribe. Here is the negative model of the pen as the rod. The scribes pick up the pen and scribe by their own authority, because they do not have the key. They are scribing with a magic wand, the rod of Hashatan, dispersing the seed of opposition. So this brings us to our deeper study on one of the most popular scriptures of today. How many of you, after experiencing a propelling from the Ruach inside you, steering you away from the conventional church of the world, and then had many people throwing this scripture in your face? don't forsake the fellowship of the church. Yep, me too. The truth is, this is just one of the scriptures that was manipulated in the interest of the world's agenda. The idea of the church is actually a huge part of the end-time schemes for false salvation. The scripture I'm about to break down is actually one of the most revealing scriptures confirming what I just said, which is exactly why they changed it. While we're doing this, you will see so many of the models and concepts that he's been teaching us up to this point. Like I've said, it all connects because it's all one message. Starting with the word not, because this is the biggest problem in the translation. The word here is wa aleph lamed. The actual word is just the parent root, aleph lamed, the ox and the staff, which is also a yoke. This is where the word Elohim comes from, translated as God. But what this word really means is the strong authority. It can also mean staff on the shoulders. We've talked about this word before, as well as the concept over and over in these messages, and it's really important. The action word here is yoke. The concrete is ox, and the abstract is strength, as well as power. This word is about who or what you are yoked to. Who is leading you? Where does your strength come from? This is where we get the picture of how the ancient Hebrews saw the character of their Elohim, the strong ox who they are yoked to. This model comes from their living experience. The older, more experienced ox who knows the way would be yoked to the less experienced ox who needs to learn the way. The two would plow the field together as they are heading toward a mark. And don't forget that aleph tau that they took out all over scripture, representing all of the 22 Otiot, but meaning an ox heading to a mark. This is honestly what our entire living experience is supposed to be all about. Walking with Elohim toward the mark, yoked to him, because we do not know the way, only he does. He is our teacher, every step of the way. This word also means oath, like a promise or a covenant. In fact, this is where we get the word all, the earring given to a bondservant. This is a slave who has been set free, but loves his master and becomes his bondservant because he wants to be with him. When we put the wa in front of this word, the tent peg, it talks about establishment and security. Wa is about adding something or joining together. The tent peg is what secures the tent. We are the tent being secured here. We are the Mishkan. This whole word is about being established in Elohim, becoming yoked to him, walking with him as he leads us to the mark. It is about accepting his proposal to join him in a covenant and become ECHAD. As we plow with him, we are experiencing life with him, and we continue to get to know him deeper. So how, you ask, was this translated to the word not? This happened over thousands of years. This is how the seed of opposition works. This is how the seen becomes corrupted. Remember that 23rd oat, the gayin, the twisted rope, how it absorbed into the ayin, which is the doorway to the heart, the doorway to understanding? That's how. A lot can be changed over thousands of years, but this is honestly where we can see the ingenious work of YHWH in how he preserved his original meanings in his Otiot. So if you were to take this word and type it into a modern Hebrew translator, the first meanings that would come up would be words like to, towards, for, or at, which makes sense for the English since the original meaning is about heading towards a mark. And then further down you would see it's also translated as don't or not. And this is where we see the understanding of the positive and negative meanings. And then you also see how it's translated as God and Lord. Confusion much? If you just take everything down to the original Otiot, it's very simple, and it all makes perfect sense. Now, the actual negative meaning to this word would be unyoked from Elohim, which wouldn't even make sense because he wouldn't be telling us to unyoke from him to yoke to the church. But the ancient Hebrews never even really used this word for that because they actually would switch the aleph and lamed. Lamed aleph to them was without or nothing, basically meaning to be without the authority of Elohim. Now, I actually looked at 3 different modern Hebrew translations to do this word, and 2 of them used this word that we just studied, wa aleph lamed, and the third one was lamed aleph, like I just talked about, but still with the wa at the front, and this is because it is up to the translator to choose the word he wants to use. And like I said, this word makes no sense here because he would not instruct us to walk without his authority. He would never tell us to unyoke ourselves from him. So I'm going to go on to the next word, which was translated as forsake. There are 2 different words here from 2 different translations, na'azav and nachadal. These are actually both child roots with the nun added at the beginning of both of them. But they both give the same understanding. Nachadal means to refrain from continuing an action, but the one that I'm going to focus on is na'azav, the child root being ayin, zayin, beit, with a nun added at the front. This word basically means to leave, but this specific ancient model and concept with this is extremely revealing. This was to describe how someone leaves their family when they are purchased as a bride. Wow! So already with just that understanding alone, you can clearly see how this is about becoming unyoked from family, not meaning that you never see your family again or that you disregard them as family. No, it's just about how you no longer look to your family as your provider because now you have a new provider, a new headship. One parent root here is zayin beit, which is about the issuing of food, specifically food of the house. Zayin being the plowing tool for planting and harvesting food, and beit being the house. Now this, of course, has extremely spiritual meaning with the food representing the word, the seed of YHWH, or the seed of opposition, depending on where your food is coming from. And this in particular here is about leaving the place that you have been getting your food, or learning truth, because now you have a new provider, a new headship, authority. You will now refrain from relying on anyone else to teach you the truth because you are yoked to the teacher himself. Now this gets even more interesting because this is also the word for yellow and gold because grain was their staple food, which was yellowish gold in color. And this is the same word used for the translation, buy your gold from me. Chew on that. Another parent root is ayin zayin, and the ancient meaning is to know a weapon or the tool. Ayin is about knowing and experiencing, and the zayin is the plowing tool but also seen as a weapon. And there is actually a pretty mature adult model going on here if you want to chew over that with Abba. But this is all about your experience while you are plowing. So yeah, you can think about what else that word plowing has been used to describe. But think about what we were just talking about with the model of the oxen walking together yoked and their experience together while they are walking and plowing. That is the more childlike model. And this is also about boldness, where your strength comes from. And obviously, if you're a new bride with a new husband, it takes boldness and strength to let go and leave your family and experience this new relationship. And really quick, the last root is ayin beit, and it means a beam, a rod. I'm not going to say too much, but if you look at those two Otiot, this is about what you are experiencing inside the tent, hidden from the eyes of others. Chew on that. So this word forsake is all about leaving all provision from anyone or anything else. Experiencing this walk through life with YHWH, the authority who dwells inside you, because you are the Mishkan where he dwells, because he is your provider and the only authority who leads you. Now the nun that is placed in the front of these words give the understanding of a continuous growth. So obviously when a bride joins her new husband, it starts a new beginning, and then the relationship grows. Have you ever wondered why Yeshua said, if one does not hate his mother and father and siblings and even his own life, cannot be his disciple? The word hate in that scripture is the root shin nun, which means to separate, which means to unyoke. You can only have one teacher. He's not talking about a physical separation, but an emotional one. We cannot be yoked to others because we are not to be led by others, even if they call themselves believers. The only way to be equally yoked with someone is to be yoked to Yahuwah and Him only, not through each other. This is because He directs us each differently throughout our lives. Even though the Kodashim are all on the same path, we're each on an intimate journey with Him, with each our own calling. Our personal experiences with Him will differ. We cannot rely on the words or opinions or ideas of others to tell us what to do throughout our lives. Only He knows what is right in each situation, and He will speak through others to encourage us when it's time, but He will always confirm. The next word I'm going to cover is the word for assembly or the church. But before I do that, I want to mention, before this word, there is an aleph tau, which again is the word that they hardly ever even translate, and even when they do, they never get it right. But this time, they didn't even translate it. But remember that the aleph tau is about the way, the oxen moving toward the mark. This is about plowing. It also talks about signs that you will see along the way. There is also another little word that is not translated in only one of the versions that I use. It is mava, mem beit he, and it talks about filling a void as well as entering an entrance. So remember how that connects to the key. So far in this scripture we have, now that you are established in the yoke of Elohim, being steered by Him, you need to unyoke yourself from trying to have the void filled by the way of the church. Now I'm using the word church here because this is the word that was used by many, but there is something very important that you need to understand here. This is not ecclesia, which is typically the Greek word most understand to be the word for church, which, by the way, in Hebrew, for example, in Ephesians where it says, husbands love your wives as Mashiach loves the church, that word for church is ad. And we've seen this word ad many times. These are His witnesses, also talking about confirmation. This verse is saying, husbands, provide for your wives just as the healer provides for His witnesses, those who He is confirming to the end, or those who have received the confirmation from the living Word Himself. But this word for church or assembly is not ecclesia. I have two words for this as well. The first word is actually Knesset, and I find this very interesting. Kaf, Nun, Samech, Yod, Tau. And this word also has a Nun Wa at the end, which is about a place of dwelling. So if you don't know the word Knesset, this has to do with government. So I'll let you do your own research on that, but this word actually comes from the child root, Kaf Nun Samech, which means to gather. And this is all about this unity with the world thing that we've been talking about. In the parent roots, we have Kaf Nun, which is about the opening of a seed, the revealing of a seed, either the good or the bad. In this case, the bad. This root talks about being sure and standing firm in something, as well as a root, like being rooted in something. So this has a lot to do with faith, sharing a lot of the same understanding as Aman. This is about where your so-called faith is coming from, what you accept as truth. Where is it rooted? And which seed? Are you standing firm on the living word of YHWH? Or are you standing on the teachings of men? The next root, Kaf Samek, means to cover, as well as a cup and a seat. This is about who your covering is, which cup you are drinking from, and whose table you are sitting at. I'm sure many of you have heard this lie about needing a covering of a church or a person. No. YHWH is our covering from the inside, period. Remember how way back we studied the word became flesh, and that word became is lavash, that is talking about to clothe from the inside? Clothing is covering. And of course we understand that we cannot drink from two different cups or sit at two different tables. Nun Samek is another root and means to continuously grab a hold of. Concrete meaning is a refuge, so this is obviously about salvation. And it also talks about lifting, like who is lifting you up or holding you up. And the abstract meaning is a standard. And I thought that this was especially interesting because a standard is like a model. We know that through modeling is how we are taught. This is how Abba teaches us, like how the Otiot represents models. Or we can look to the world to model after, which is disguised to look like truth. Now the other word that is used in the other version is the child root Kuf He Lamed, and this word also means to gather, as well as shepherd. The main root here is Kuf Lamed, which means gathering to the staff, and it talks about the sheep gathering to the shepherd. This is also used for the word flock. There is a Tau as well as a Nun Wa attached to the end of this word. The Tau talking about a mark and also talks about where you are storing your treasure, and the Nun Wa again is about where you are dwelling. So what is this word talking about? This is talking about gathering to and being led by a different shepherd who seeks to be your covering, inviting you to sit down for eat and drink, issuing a different seed that will then take root in you, filling the void in you, being what takes root in you, which becomes your so-called faith, your salvation, which of course in the end leaves you empty and enslaved. Now at the end of this study, I'm going to reveal some truth about another scripture that will make this even more clear. But what is really important to understand here is that just because they have made everyone think this verse is talking about the church, because that's how they translated it, it's not only talking about a church. This is telling us to become unyoked from any other provider. This is why we were told not to eat with unbelievers, because eating food is a model of receiving messages. Remember? You can find the details to this in the Battle of the Mind studies. It's all about where our faith is coming from, and this goes way deeper than a physical gathering. This is about relying on anyone to feed you truth, even if they are saying they're believers. Because first of all, no believer knows all truth. And secondly, even if they are speaking truth, if you are relying on them, you are yoked to them, not YHWH. In other words, if you are coming here to receive the truth about what the Bible really says, and you are taking my word for it, relying on me, and not relying on YHWH for the understanding, that's being yoked to me, not YHWH. And it's the same with relying on any words from any person about anything, because you think that the advice of someone else about anything is more reliable than the authority who wants to dwell inside you, teaching you about everything. So I'm just going to do one more word in this verse to complete this whole understanding, where it says, as is the custom or habit of some. This word for custom or habit is the word derek, with a kaf added at the front. And we've seen this word before in the Ancient Path study, which was quite a while ago. And in that scripture, it was translated to ways. Stand in the ways and see. And this word is very interesting because in the concrete original meaning, it is talking about the stringing of a bow, as well as your path of life. Now we have a lot of models here converging to give us a complete idea of what this is really talking about. First of all, the three main words in the lexicon are tread, road, and steps. So we can see how this is talking about our path of life, and that path being modeled by the oxen heading toward the mark that we've been talking about. Well, when you are an archer shooting an arrow, you are also aiming for a mark. And when you string a bow, you step or tread on the string. And stringing a bow is about preparing for good aim. And I know that many of you are going to be having all kinds of scripture coming to your mind about this. And also think about how we've talked before about the word sin, and how it comes from an archery term meaning to miss the mark. So I want to go into the roots because it gets even more interesting. Dalet resh is one of the roots of debar, which is the word talking about order. And this root means circle. And it's talking about cycles, the back and forth movement of a man. Dalet is about moving back and forth because it's a door that you go in and out of. This is about a continual cyclical process. Now this is getting a little deep. Dalet kaf is about crushing, and the concrete word is mortar. It means back and forth in a cup or cavity. So if you picture a pestle and mortar and how they are used to crush, and there is also an adult model there of back and forth in a cavity. And of course, when you are treading on a road, you are crushing whatever is under your feet. And the resh kaf is talking about the loins of a man. Now, this has several meanings. It means man covered, which again talks about a covering, but it also talks about a man being tamed, as well as being submissive, or bringing someone into submission. And the kaf at the front of the word is talking about submission as well as being tamed. So this word is talking about a continuous action that is taming you. As you keep coming back, you are being submissive to it. Think about how you tame a dog by cyclically teaching him over and over. As you see here, the kaf is being held up to train the dog to stay, be patient, kawa, So who are we being tamed and trained by? Whose instruction are we being led by? This is as far as we're going to go in this scripture today. But what is the message here? It is certainly not telling us to habitually go to church, gathering together on a man-made schedule so that we can learn the truth from man. That is never what Yeshua or any of his followers did. They gathered when the Ruach gathered them. They walked as the wind blows. And this, again, is not to be turned into a rule. It's not that we can't get together. He will cause his children to gather when he wills, and he will also set up appointments without us even knowing. Obviously, it is him who has gathered this mishpacha, this family, by his Ruach, and he is in charge of each gathering. When, how, and what about? Once we are established in the yoke of the strong authority of YHWH, secure with his staff on our shoulder, his authority is guiding us from within. We will then become unyoked to everything else, seeking provision from YHWH only. Why? Because you cannot have more than one master. You cannot be led by more than one yoke. But there's another scripture that I've been wanting to share for quite some time, and it makes perfect sense that Abba left it for this study. The wolf in sheep's clothing. I know I don't have time to break this down, but I thought it important to tell you that even though this little wolf in sheep's clothing translation is a cute little phrase and makes a lot of sense and is true, it's really not all of what it is saying. The enemy may disguise himself as sheep sometimes, but this verse is actually saying that the enemy is disguised as the shepherd. A false prophet is someone who is revealing the bad seed, feeding the bad seed. And the word for wolf is actually zayin beit, food of the house, which we saw today. Because the wolf was known as a yellowish golden color, so they began to use this word to describe the wolf as well. The word that they translated as sheep actually means to subdue or to use as a footstool. This is about being brought into submission, and the word they used for skins or clothing is actually talking about being naked. I'm going to give a quick translation with all of the words from the Otiot. Keep a close watch for the false rod of desire of the so-called prophets who attract your attention to filling your void by planting false desire. They are looking to be your covering, but are naked themselves, and they are bringing you into submission to the wrong master, gathering by turning your face to a false salvation, where you are then contained behind walls like a prison, where they issue false food of confusion from the bad seed. So in closing, this message about letting go goes really deep because we are holding on to more than we think. This whole message is what Alan's Elohim number 1 on a list of 1 message is all about. I disabled comments because he told me to, and there is a lot of purpose in it. Besides the obvious being that it is a public platform where anyone can say anything, and it's a lot to keep up with monitoring that, but he's also giving more opportunity for everyone to go to him first. It's all part of this message. And he's also doing some really big work in me. I don't know if I have the right words, but he's taking away the opinions on both sides. He doesn't want me walking in the approval or disapproval of anyone but him. And it's all a part of my letting go. I walk by his words to me. And I'm not saying that I don't want your encouragement. He uses you guys your words to encourage me and bring confirmation all the time. And if you're led by him to comment or question, then my other videos are there for commenting for the time being. Remember, I can only barely see the next step in front of me. And if you do comment, just make sure that it's a new comment instead of commenting under an old one, because otherwise I'll probably never see it. I don't get most of my notifications, so I just have to periodically check and go through all my videos. Back to letting go. For some of you, this message is just a confirmation of what he has already been showing you. And for others, you are scared. You want to be led by YHWH, but you are unsure how this happens without someone telling you that you are doing it right. You feel like you need someone's approval, or you need to see the words written down somewhere to be sure. You are asking, how do I know how to hear his voice? How will I know it is him who's guiding me? What if I'm deceived? How can I trust? What if I'm really hearing the seed of opposition? And this is where you need to have that discussion with YHWH. Ask him to teach you how to hear his voice. And wait, he is the only one with the answer. He is just waiting for you to not only ask, but then to wait and trust him to answer you before you go running somewhere else. Because if you're truly desiring truth above all things through a relationship with your Creator, if that's really what you desire, then it's not yourself that you're trusting. Remember, you're yoked. He is steering your heart and mind. And that doesn't mean that you won't stumble, but you have to trust that he will teach you through your living experiences, through the stumbles, and he will confirm over and over again. It is the seed of opposition that causes you to doubt you're being led by Elohim, which then causes you to go and run to the arms of someone else, seeking approval. That's the game of enslavement. It all comes down to the true desires and motives of your heart, and only he can show you that. So you need to ask him. No one can teach you how he speaks to you, and it will be in every way possible, because he communicates through our heart and mind. He will teach you how to discern the difference between the thoughts from the two seeds. And if you don't trust that he will, then what you really don't trust is your own desires. I have this conversation with him every day, Chavarim, because we are in a war. If you are yoked to him, when you read the scriptures, he is reading them with you, and he will point out the hidden truth. When you come across something that makes you pause for a second, ask him about it, and then wait for him to teach you through living experience. And many of you have already been experiencing this as our mind has been being renewed with this new way that he is teaching us how to think. We are seeing the scriptures differently. You know, many people say that the written scriptures have been supernaturally protected all these years. And they have, just not in the way that you think. The living word is hidden. The yoke is hidden. But YHWH's people have traded the hidden yoke for one that they can see. He wants to take us treasure hunting. And don't forget where treasure is hidden. It's hidden in the ground. Ground, man, same root. He hides his treasure in us. So where do you need to go looking for it? Yeah, in there where he dwells, inside you. Continuous conversation, prayer, thoughts, continuous connection with him. He will teach you every step of the way. He steers you from the inside of you. Reach out to Him for His yoke, because He's already reaching for you. He desires us first. Let go and trust that Elohim has established His way in you. I love you all so much. Until the next time, stay yoked. Shalom.
All tied up, too many strings, tangled and dangling at the end of a rope. Had enough of too many things, yeah, before it all adds up to one major overload. Let it go, oh, into the river that flows. Let it go, oh, catching up pulls you down. Tomorrow never comes when we're around. Fall in love right here and now, yeah. Yesterday is just a fading sunset on your shadow. Let it go, oh, just let the river flow. Let it go, yeah. Pointless fingers aim at nothing, asking you to believe that your brothers and sisters are taking something that you're gonna need, yeah. And don't you wonder why you look for alibis when all you really want is what you already know. Look at today and how you ought to know by now. You never really held anything until you let it go. Oh, don't you know? You let the river flow. Let it go. Let it go. Oh, just like a river flow, yeah.